What's going on, everybody? I'm Jimmy Don Kerr, and this is the SmallTown Collectibles YouTube channel. And today, my guest is a channel that I love to watch weekly. On this channel, you're going to see content such as the comics my mom let me keep, A-OK unboxings, espresso mail calls, and you may even see his alter ego Bruno make an appearance into a mystery box opening. My favorite segment, however, is his new comic book day cover picks. I have to watch that. It's must watch for me every single week. And for some reason, as I've watched this guy's channel, I have a closeness, or I feel a closeness to him that I can't really explain. I don't know if he was a professional. He was a lawyer for many years. He's now retired, and I'm in the banking industry. I don't know. I just kind of feel a closeness to this guy, and I hope in my retirement years, and that's not that long away, really, for me, that I am as cool as this guy. So everybody join me in welcoming to 10 Questions, Joe from Anachronic Comics.
How you doing, Jimmy? Hey, everybody.
Hey, Joe. Thank you so much, my friend, for coming on. Been looking forward to doing this one for a while after you came on with us on Gary B's channel on In the Hot Seat. And that's one of the things, like we've had some people on, Gary B's channel, and then I'm like, man, I want to talk more to these guys, like just kind of one-on-one. And I definitely felt that. And I meant when I said that, like, I feel a closeness to you, and I'm not exactly sure why it is. Like, I don't know if it's because I maybe
it's my fatherly look, I think,
is that what it
most
is?
of you guys are, I don't know what your age is, Jimmy, but most of these guys that I'm dealing with, they're kind of in their 40s, maybe late 40s.
Yeah, I'm 46.
You're 46. Okay, so that's right there, smack dab in the middle. And although my son is 29 and my daughter is 25, we had them a little late, and I could be your dad, right?
Right.
So you want to please me. You want me to like you, and I do. So you're okay.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I don't know, when we talked to you that night, I was just like, man, I dig this guy. And really, as far as how I see myself down the road, I've always said that, someday I'm going to sell my company and I'm going to retire to the Caribbean and open a comic book shop. And I don't even care if I sell comic books. I'm just going to have a comic book store and hang out on the beach and read comic books. So, like I said, man, I love your channel. There's a lot of great content. And so we'll just jump right into it, Joe, with question number one. And it's the same question for everybody that comes on here. And that is, what or who got you into collecting?
Well, it's a tough question because it was so long ago, right? But my best pal, still to this date, John, and I used to go to, to the candy store. But, there were no LCSs, no comic book shops in those days. But there were newsstands. There were some candy stores, where you can get a soda, buy some candy, and they had the comic books there. And what I remember was that he and I were the ones, we would go there, and he really knew a lot more about comics in those days than I did. He used to drag me along and saying, the new Batman annual's coming out. Let's go there. So I'm pretty sure it was John. I don't think I would have done that. He's more of that guy that was into it, and brought me along with him. And he was my primary trader, where we would buy comics and sit on the stoop in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And sit down there and read, the comic books and trade them over and do all that type of stuff. So I'd give John that credit.
Did anybody in your family, like a mom, dad, aunt, uncle, brother, sister, anybody like that, did any of those people collect or read comics at all?
No. My dad was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but when he was 9 months old, my grandfather brought the family back to Italy. So he grew up there, met my mother there. And then they came back here in 1950. And so this was not something that I think was even on their radar screen, really.
Right.
And outside of that, and my friend John, I had a couple of older cousins, but I can't say that I remember them ever having a comic book. Just don't recall seeing that at all. So I think I'm a first generation comic guy, I think, in my family. So that's that.
That's cool. So, like, you grew up in New York, you said,
Right.
in Manhattan, and I imagine back in those days, because I've been to New York several times, and, I'm always looking for like these magazine stands. And I don't know, there's a nostalgia of when you see those, kind of on the street corner. I don't know. It's just a cool way to me because I never had anything like that here in Kentucky. It was
Mm,
always we went to the supermarket
right.
and they had a magazine rack over there, and my mom would shop and I would go read comic books.
Mhm.
And so, was that how it was during that time? Can you kind of describe to me what it was like, where you would go and buy books?
Well, there were two main places and a third really where I used to go. One was about 2 blocks away from my house. There was one of these, again, newsstand stores, kind of, where you went in there and you could buy, I guess, candy again, that type of stuff. And I remember he had a wall there with comic books. And I'd go in there. And it wasn't like you go into a comic book store now and there's like, a million comic books. You might go in there looking for a particular comic and they may only have like 5 or 6 of them, there, and different comics, with maybe
Yeah.
a couple of copies of each. Then there was another store across the street from my grammar school, which was I still remember it was this European couple, and they made great like milkshakes and things like that, had candy, and he had comic books there. But he was really tough because, in the other shop, I could go and like pick up the comic book and look at it. Here it was like almost like if you touch it, you bought it type of stuff.
Yeah. Right.
He let you do it, but you could see he was just like,
He didn't
it
like
was
it.
hard
Yeah.
for him, you know. But so I'd buy some comics there as well. Occasionally I go, my best friend John, one of the reasons why he was really into it is because his uncle owned one of those standalone newspaper stands. We used to buy the newspaper there. My dad, I used to buy it for him over there. And he had some comics and some of the pulps from those days too that I used to buy and so forth to read. But the third place he used to go a lot to was right across the street from that very first place, right around the block. It was a bookstore. Now, this bookstore was a used bookstore. And to this day, I love used bookstores. I mean, I could go in there for hours and hours and maybe not buy a book, but just look through these books and find them. And this used bookstore guy, I became one of his best customers. He used to buy comics from you for 2 cents. Remember, these are 10-cent comics now, right? He used to buy the comic for 2 cents, put it in a drawer, and you'd be able to go through the drawer and he'd sell it to you for 5 cents. And I was such a good customer that on occasion he would tell me, go pick a free one up. I still have 2 of those free ones in my collection. And the only bad thing about them is that he used to write free on them.
Oh,
So,
no.
and he also had some which were coverless that he used to give to me for free and that type of
Yeah.
stuff too. So that was kind of it. It was a very small world in that respect. And I had a lot of friends, I had my gang of kids that, we played stoop ball, punch bowl, and the rest of the stuff like that in the city. And I have to say that bunch of friends, I don't remember anybody really being into comics. It was really my best friend, John, and I that really, really were into the comics. And to this day, we still kind of go when we can. He lives pretty far away in New Jersey. And so we don't get to see each other that often, though, we do talk and whatever else. So occasionally we'll get together to go see a movie, like we saw Shazam together, for example,
Oh, cool.
that type of thing. But we
Well,
used to,
I was going to ask you, does he still collect?
no, not as far as I know. Matter of fact, a lot of the comics that he had, one of the things that I'm putting together now as part of the comics my mom let me keep, which we can talk about if you want at some point. But I have a portion of that collection that I call the Johnny Boy 2 cents collection. It's John's father's name was John, so he was Johnny Boy. And in those days, all the adults called me Joey, So I was Joey and he was Johnny Boy. So when we got into high school, John's mother, I guess it was, probably told him, you're in high school now. You got to get rid of these comics. So he sold me a bunch of his for 2 cents each,
Oh, wow.
including things like X-Men #2,
Oh,
things
wow.
like that, which I won't give away because I'm going to do a series of videos. I'm trying to get him involved in it, but he's very bashful. He won't answer my emails when I tell him, hey, I want to do this. You want to get on with me? And he doesn't answer me.
Yeah. So that means no.
I think that's what it means. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fine. So one other thing, and I find this interesting, like, your childhood growing up in New York, and you just mentioned it, like you guys would go on the street and play street ball. Can you kind of describe too, like what a day for a kid growing up in a big city like that was because for us, we would go run around the hills, right? Like we stayed in the hills. Um, our moms would send us out in the morning, don't come back till dark, pack us a lunch, send us, we'd go play in the hills all day, play war, play GI Joes, whatever.
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in your day? Like just out on the, hanging out on the street? Did your mom send you out and say, "Hey, come back when the lights come on"?
Not so much sent you out. I mean, basically, when you came home from school, you had to do your homework, and if you finished it in time, you can go out for a bit. But more so as kind of like the weekends or days off from school. I'd get together with my pals and we'd play stoop ball around the corner or, punch ball or stick ball. And I was there recently and I said, how did we play in this narrow street with these cars parked and all that? But we managed to do it. We played football, but we used a rubber ball. We used to call them a Spalding, which I mentioned to my pal Matt Woods. We were at a Comic-Con just recently. And he goes, "What's a Spalding?" I said, "It's a rubber ball." It said Spalding on it. And you'd have to have a live one. And we'd stand up and we just let go of it by our forehead. And if it bounced and it came up over your waist, it was a live ball. Once it didn't make it to your waist, we chucked it because it wasn't any good to play with. But on the weekends, we would go out. And yeah, we wouldn't come back until it was dark, unless your mother would go out the window and call you, or someone saying, "Hey, your mother's looking for you, it's time for dinner," or something like that. It was a lot of, when I grew up, it was all families in that area.
Yeah.
And now I think it's more, there's a lot of professional people, it's a little bit of a different thing. There's still families there, but it was really kind of a middle class, family oriented thing. Everybody knew each other. If you did something wrong, you could be sure that somebody would have seen you and gone to your parents and said, "You know what Joe did?" So there were eyes on you all the time. It was just almost like growing up in a small neighborhood, except it wasn't. It was in the city with a lot of different people.
I mean, that's very similar to here, though. I mean, where we live, we're more spread out, right? You're not right on top of each other. It's more spread out. But everybody watched everybody's kids,
Right.
because, like, we would get on our bikes and, right up, it's a 2-lane road. You'd have to be careful. But, everybody was looking out for everybody. We would go play basketball at the elementary school up the road outside all day, come back and go swimming. Like I said, we would spend a lot of time in the hills just romping around and playing. So honestly, to be two completely different places, it doesn't sound really that different. We were playing a lot of baseball. We'd play football, we'd play whatever, just to kind of pass the time. So that's cool.
The big difference was you didn't have to dodge the cars in the street like we did.
No, that's very true. Yeah, no, we had big fields that we played in. So,
right.
Like where my house is, it's just a big, massive field in between where my house is and my mom's house is.
Right.
Just a big old place, and we used to play out there all the time. All right, so question 2. As far as the way you collect today, do you consider yourself more a reader or a collector?
I knew you were going to ask me that question because you ask everybody that question.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about it. And although I hate to say it, I think I'm more of a collector now. The 2 comic books that I would buy without fail each month were Amazing Spider-Man and the Justice League. Justice League I've been buying since I was a kid. Spider-Man, first one I bought was Spider-Man number 9, So I've been collecting it, except for that time period when I wasn't collecting. Those are the ones that I would take and I would read. But I guess over the last maybe 5-6 months or whatever else, I found myself going and buying more of kind of some of these indies and just waiting and collecting them. A little bit like Gary B does. I wait until it just basically all 5, 6, or 10 issues are there, and then I read through them. And I've been buying covers as well. And so what I found was I started buying covers, started buying these other books, and I used to buy Batman, Superman. I just stopped. And when I take a look at it, I've got some books that I read, but I think I collect more than I read now. And it's ended up meaning that I have so many of these different comics around, and actually started looking at them saying, why do I still have these comics? What am I doing with them? It's become kind of a different thing. When you're reading them, that's one thing. When you're just buying them for other reasons or potentially spec reasons, it became a whole different deal for me. And that's one thing I think is a little bit strange, at least for me now, is I didn't get into, reading comics and stuff again around 2007, 2006. thinking about specs or what was there, but it's almost like you have to now.
Sure.
So I'm really trying to kind of gauge in some ways, what should I be doing with my collection and what should I be doing going forward? I'm not quite there yet, but I'm thinking it through, because I think going into 2022, I want to have a real specific thing that I'm going to be, certain goal that I want to get to with respect to my collection.
So, some of the videos you do are, like the books that your mom let you keep, and then some books that you found in the basement that you brought out. Have you found yourself going back and trying to read those, or is it more trying to preserve what they are?
Well, I think both. One of the things that I've been doing as I get to one of those um, videos, the comics mom let me keep, um, I do go through them, and look at them and read some of them. Not necessarily all of them, but I do read some of them for a couple of different reasons. One is it allows me to be more, fact specific in the videos. I can
Sure.
talk a little bit about more what the stories are, some of the art, and what's in there. For example, I have a number of early Thor issues, and when I did the video on Thor, I actually read through every single one of them because I didn't remember any of them. So I read through every single one, and then I took some pictures of some of the internal pages and talked about those a little bit. So there's two things there. One is I'm enjoying them again, some of them like 40 or 50 years later. And the second thing is it gives me some content that I can, relate to the viewers. So they're more, I guess, more intimately involved with my reading of the comic book.
Cool. Yeah, no, I always kind of, because when you pull those out, it was like the first thing that popped in my mind. And like I even made a note because I have different, guests that I want to talk to. And I keep a notebook and I'll go in and say, I'd like to ask Joe that question. Do you go back and read those now? Like when you pull them out. So, and now question 3, and this just really kind of builds on what you were just talking about as far as since you've got back in and the way you buy. And I know that you've even commented on one of my videos, the comics on a budget.
Yeah.
That you were saying, hey, I'm having to back off, of buying so many things. So since you got back into the hobby, because I know for me that, I've been in it now since Rebirth started. So that was 16 roughly. So about 5 years now, I've been back into it. The way that I consume books has changed so much from then to now. And the way, because I've really gone kind of digital in a lot of the way that I read.
Right.
I still pick up my titles, the ones that I love, and like you said, the spec aspect of it, you almost have to look at, in some ways. How has, like, I was buying every cover, like I would buy Superman, and if it had 5 covers, I'd buy them all, you
Yeah.
know. And like, how has it changed for you from since you got back into it? Like, did you go through a similar, kind of a path or journey to where you are now?
The funny thing about it was when I first got into it again around 2006 or 7, something like that. Um, I wasn't buying every cover or anything like that. I was simply enjoying what I had. I have to tell you, it was more when I started watching YouTube that it started to sort of say, oh, there's all these covers and variants and virgin covers and all of that. And the first one I did this with, and I mean, I've got to find them too, and I don't know what they're worth, but when uh what was it? Was it Superpowers? I think when that series came out with Ross, doing the drawings and everything like that, they took a lot of uh, heroes that were no longer copyrighted, right, from like way back when, and they redid some of the stories and that type of stuff, and it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good, but at that point in time, I said, "No, look, they got all these. They even had a one cover that was worth, I think that they were selling for $200, something like that, or $150. I bought that one." So in retrospect, I look at it and I say, "Why did I do that?" Then the second one was Civil War. When Civil War came out, there were all of these concurrent like storylines in different books, and so I have every single one of them. As a matter of fact, um, who was it? She-Hulk, I guess it was. She-Hulk number 8. I still remember that. She-Hulk, I think it was She-Hulk number 8 was the one that had like a concurrent storyline to Civil War, and I couldn't find it. So I ended up getting a second print, but it bothered the hell out of me. So actually, I went in and I found somebody selling like numbers 1 through 8 or 9 of She-Hulk. I bought the entire series he was selling just so I can have the first print. I don't do that anymore. But that was where I was,
Right.
back a number of years ago. And it was just, in retrospect, I don't know what I was thinking, but I guess it's kind of cool because now I have these complete, sets, but, you know,
Oh yeah. No, I mean, like I said, I went through this whole thing where when Civil War II came out, about that same time that I got back in, I told at my LCS, I said, I want every tie-in, I want
yeah.
everything. And then I go to the store and there's a stack of books like this. And I was like, holy crap. Like I didn't realize how many tie-ins there were, what
Yeah.
it was really all about, and that you didn't really have to have the tie-ins to get the main story. It was just
You
kind of
don't.
offshoots of what was going on in the main title.
That's right. You don't. And that's what I learned too.
Yeah.
And so, although I picked up some of these series, I just like Spider-Man has a number of them, right? That have come out. And
Yeah.
I'm just reading the Spider-Man part, and that's it. And I don't care what's happening, with Iron Man or Doctor. I don't care because that's what's going on. And the story is what's happening in Spider-Man.
Right. No, yeah, no, I kind of went through the same thing. And even today, it's changed a little more where, I find myself reading books digitally. And if it's
Yeah.
something I really dig or I think it has some heat to it, then I might go pick a few copies up.
Right.
Um, but otherwise, it's really kind of changed a whole lot, since I got back into it. It's just funny how that evolution is. And I'd like to talk to people about that too, just to see if they've had similar experiences to, what I've had. Um, so let's jump over to question 4.
Okay.
And that is about why you got into the YouTube game. Like, why did you start your YouTube channel?
Yeah. I dropped my first video about 10 months ago. But before that, I was I got involved with Reggie collects with Reggie and a lot of his people, the whole Gibbon gang and everything else. In fact, this T-shirt is from one of my pals there, Master Blaster, who's in the Air Force, and he sent me this on Christmas time.
Oh,
So
cool.
anyway, he so last I guess it was in the summertime. Um, I was in Cape Cod, and I was getting a lot of books mailed to me. I didn't want to open up the mailers there. I wanted to wait until I came back to New York. And so on Instagram, I mentioned to people, or I put a picture, said I got all these mailers here, and I jokingly said maybe I should start a YouTube channel to open up these things. And everybody said, yeah, do it, do it. They started pushing me to do it. So then I started thinking about it. I started experimenting a little bit, with my phone and a few other things to see how it's going to go. And I guess it was last November, November of last year, I published my first video, and Bruno appeared in that first video as well. It was just something where I always was a little bit of a, even though I was a lawyer and you have to be kind of staid and know what you're doing, and I was, I thought it was a pretty good lawyer, and I made sure that I did things the right way. If you talk to my daughter or my son or my wife, they all think that I'm a bit Looney Tunes. I mean, I can go and do crazy things.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't know if it was a release or what have you. So this just played right into it. And when I did the first one, I said, hey, I'm going to do like this streetwise guy from like the Lower East Side that now lives in Brooklyn or something like that, with the cap and all that. And I just did him as kind of a lark. And I didn't really think, I thought maybe I'll do it again at some other time, but people seem to like him. And so then I went through, and some of the stuff that I do now is just trying to think up, how can I do something different? Like the espresso mail call. I mean, I love espresso. I'm Italian. I love espresso. And so I'm sitting down there and I get these express mails. And I said, express espresso. So make some espresso, drink the espresso, and open up the mail. And so that was just kind of the way it came about with respect to that. And yeah, so these different things kind of pop into my mind. I did a video for Freaky Louie on my 500 subscriber show. I showed some of these videos that are there. So to me, it's just kind of fun to do. I'm not bashful. I mean, I've spoken before hundreds of people. I'm not bashful about any of that stuff. And so I just, that's what happened. And I opened it up and it was kind of fun to do. Started thinking about how to do it. And and started it off. I matter of fact, I did some videos way back then that I'd never published, and I just looked at them and I said, "Boy, they're really terrible." I said, "These are really bad." And so, but I think that's the progression. It's
Yeah, no, I think so too. So, as being a lawyer, especially, I don't know, did you do any trial law, like where you were in
oh yeah,
court? And okay,
yeah,
so like from what I've seen and from what I know, a really, really good trial lawyer is almost a great actor.
oh yeah,
And in the way that they express themselves, in the way that they are trying to grab a jury or whoever they're talking to and pull them into whatever story they're trying to tell, right? So, did you like, did that was one of the things, as far as like YouTube, I've never considered myself a creative person at all. I'm very matter of fact. I'm very business oriented, very numbers oriented. I understand numbers and things like that, but I never considered myself a creative person. I can see where a lawyer, if you did that type of work, might be looking for some kind of creative outlet to get on, and is any of that true for you at all as far as like
yeah,
the creative aspect of it?
yeah. I like what you said about being a lawyer. I mean, I did some trials, but I did mostly appellate work where I would argue cases. A lot of them in federal appellate court, so you have 3 judges there. I've did those all over the country. And one of the things, I'll tell you a quick story. Uh, there was I guess he was a manager at the time, that was in one of our offices. And anytime we had a case that involved that particular office, he was pretty much almost all the time my go-to witness. So we had the trials, he'd be there, he'd be the witness. And obviously we'd practice beforehand, what are we going to do? What are we going to try to prove? So one of those cases went up on appeal. And it happened to be in one of these intermediate appellate courts in New York State. And although he was from upstate New York, he had family in Long Island. And this case happened to be in Long Island. So he calls me up and says, "Joe, that case is coming up for appeal. I'm going to be visiting some family in Long Island. Can I stop by and watch?" I said, "Yeah, sure. I mean, it's open. Come on. Yeah, come back and watch. It's at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, whatever it was, and we can go have some lunch afterwards." So I get up there and I argued the case, right? And when I'm finished, and I put everything away, I see him sitting down there. I go out with him, and he looks at me, and his jaw is like this. He's like this. I go, "What's the matter?" He said, "I've never seen you like that." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Like you were there and arguing this thing and going through this stuff with and I said, "Well," I said, "Yeah, that's my job. I mean, I could think it's a dog of a case, but I'm here to represent the company or whatever, and I'm going to put my best foot forward." And so that's really, in some ways, where the acting comes out, because you have to be thinking about what the judges are going to say. The best cases I had is where I anticipated 3 questions that the judges would ask me, right? And they asked me those 3 questions because I then can hit the ball right out of the park. And to me, that's part of the prep, but also, showing the judges that you really believe in this case and that they need to believe in it too. It's acting, really. I mean, in a lot of different ways. And so I think you're right. I think that kind of plays very easily into YouTube. But I've done other things too. I've done some plays and so forth. I did a play in law school where we spoofed the professors. Sang songs and did some dancing and did stuff like that. And I've done other things that you might look at in terms of performance in the past as well. So it's not too different. Obviously it's more specific. There are facts and there's law that you have to know, but you're still kind of putting forward that face where you are now the convincer and you're telling them, "You got to listen to me because I know what I'm talking about and you should believe me."
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, I am the chairman of our local water district, and it's a trouble. Nobody cares about this, but I'll tell you since we're kind of talking. It's very trouble. We're in rural eastern Kentucky, a lot of mountains. It's very, very difficult to maintain a water system because of the elevation changes where we live. And past government, officials did not do what they should have done in keeping
Mhm.
up our infrastructure. Like we've literally been all over. I've been on CNN, I've been on Fox. Like I'm not joking. Like national
Wow.
news talking about our water. And when I do those interviews, I have to do them because I have to present our side of the story versus the people that are, bashing us, so to speak. And then I have to go to the Public Service Commission. Like I actually have to go Friday and testify before these commissioners. And a lot of that is getting up there, being prepared, A, but B, being passionate about what I'm talking about, almost like acting. And like I'm just up there because I'm trying to convince them that, hey, we're on the right track here. Yeah, we still have some issues, with what we're doing, but we've got aging infrastructure that's going to be there, forever until we can get, we need money. And so, but it's just when I knew you were a lawyer, and then just kind of some of the experiences I've had, and then what I've seen with lawyers in court when we're doing these things, it very much is like acting. And I just thought that was interesting in the fact that you now do YouTube. Like there's almost like a creative switch from being in the courtroom versus now being on YouTube. So yeah, cool. Yeah, I find that so interesting. I hope everybody that's watching this finds that interesting too. But I think that's really, really cool. So question 5 is actually about Bruno. Okay, and I wanted to know: has Bruno been around a long time, or did he, or did he just start when you started doing YouTube?
I guess the answer is Bruno is new, but the character probably is not.
Right.
Okay. When I had to think about who it was, the name Bruno just popped into my mind. But growing up in Manhattan and being Italian and growing up in the city, we all had a New York accent. All right. Maybe not as much as Bruno's, but again, I was a high school teacher for a bit, and I taught Spanish, and I thought when I was in college I should go somewhere and speak Spanish for a while, and so I took some summer courses in Mexico, right? And I happened to be living in a home that a woman would rented out rooms, and there were a couple of other American students there, a guy from Minnesota, a guy from San Diego, and some Mexican students there. So it was kind of cool. We had one of the Mexican guys had a car. We drove all over Mexico on the weekends. It was a very, very great experience. But I said, so being like, it's kind of being in a dorm and people would play tricks on each other. So these guys played some kind of trick on me. I don't remember what it was. So I looked over to him and said, would you guys stop it? Right. So the guy from Minnesota, I never forget this, the guy from Minnesota started laughing so much, his tears coming down his eyes. And I go, what are you laughing at? He goes, I've never heard that before live. I go, what? You said use guys. He said, I only saw that on the Bowery Boys movies, when they said that type of stuff. Well, that kind of hit me, to be honest with you. It kind of hit me. Not that I was embarrassed about it, but I thought to myself, here I am in college, and I'm still saying things like use guys.
Yeah.
And so I made it a point to change the way I spoke and to, really try to speak more New Yorkish, like I don't know what you want to say, upper class, whatever you want to say, So that was kind of part of my life in some ways, and again, not like Bruno exactly, but and the other thing is, I met and knew a lot of guys that spoke just like Bruno.
Sure.
I mean, not really any different. And some people are still that way. When you go somewhere, sometimes I go visit some family or whatever in Staten Island. Or in New Jersey, and you have people that aren't too different. So Bruno is a character, and he's kind of based a little bit on me, but he's more based on people that I've known.
That's I actually was wondering, was there somebody in your life that you knew that was very Bruno? As far as like, and that's where it kind of came from. Like obviously I talk funny. I'm from Eastern Kentucky. I have the accent. And which is fine. That's, that's just who we are. I'm proud of it, and that's just how I talk. So, and, people from New York, generally Boston, have a certain type of accent as well. And that's really like with Bruno. I just wondered if there was like one person, like an uncle or somebody like that, that like really was like Bruno.
All my uncles and aunts spoke what I call Italiash, a combination of Italian and English. If I went to them and spoke to them as Bruno, I don't know that they would understand me. but there are people and characters that you meet, and a lot of them have these kind of deep, I would say deep, whatever you want to call it, New York or Brooklyn accents. And again, I think Bruno is a little bit over the top.
Yeah, no, cool. No, I love it though. Like you mentioned, like you had taken some Spanish, you went to Mexico, thought maybe I should, travel and actually use the language, right? Actually speak. How many languages can you speak right now?
Well, I'm a bit out of practice, but I probably can still get by in Spanish and Italian. Um, and some people say that I speak English fairly well.
Yeah. Oh, cool, man. No, love that. I find that so interesting. All right, so question 6. And as I stated in the introduction, it is must watch for me every week your comic book covers for New Comic Book Day. Like, I do a show, with first appearances and key issues every week, and I do add a few covers that I like. And I just wondered, like, what is it about the covers that draws you to them, and why you made, you obviously like it because you make content. Like I study a lot of like first appearances. I'm always looking for key issues. Those are things that I really study and kind of look into each week before I make my selection. So what is it about the covers that drew you to them?
Well, I guess it was a couple of things. Number one, just obviously the artwork itself. People like Perillo and some of these other people are just fantastic artists, I think. And I've mentioned on some channels, maybe on my own, where I really believe that they could be, artists to the kings if it was the Middle Ages or whatever else, and be drawing some of these things that you might see in some museums. When I studied Spanish, I also studied Spanish culture, and people like Velázquez and Goya were two of my favorite artists. And there's a museum in New York that has a lot of their art. And I see some of what these people do, albeit with Batman or somebody else, as being almost on that level, and that they can do. So I just kind of love the covers. But the other part of it was, and if you think about it, look at the YouTube channels. When people show a comic, they might talk about the content, all right? And some of them do. But what they really show is say, this is a dope cover. This is a great cover. This is cover, blah, 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 this and that. This was done by this person, that person. Look at this cover. And so I said to myself, you know what? Let me see what covers are out there. And what I found out is that just about any week, there's about 150 comics to come out, sometimes 200. And so I just started, found some websites so I go through the websites and I just try to find comic book covers that I like. And I think if you watch it, especially if you watch it every week or most weeks, you'll see that I gravitate towards certain types of covers because it's simply what I like. But I do try sometimes to find something unique if I can. And I can be honest with you now, Jimmy, I was getting a little bit bored myself because I'm kind of picking the same type of covers. So I came up with something else where, my forte is really like the 1960s. That's really where most of my collection took place. And so I said, you know what? Let me put something in there where, before I go through the honorable mentions in the top 5, I'm going to pick what I think is an iconic cover from the 1960s, And so I started doing that a few weeks ago. And a couple of weeks ago then too, one of my pals that I trade text messages with, I'm kind of a DC guy, right? And he's kind of a DC guy too. And we just started talking about some covers, and he was talking about some of the covers I picked. And then he said, this is like some new covers that are definitely going to be iconic. And so I told him, I said, hey, I said, why don't you come on the show and pick a recent cover? This would be this week, but a recent cover that you think is iconic, and just say why. And he didn't want to come on, because he's bashful. But I kind of cajoled him into it. Then he got into it, and he made a really good first video.
Yeah, he did.
And the second one is going to be on this week. I said, you don't have to do it every week, just when something strikes you. And he came up with a pretty decent one, I think, this week as well, where there's some controversy around it. It'll show before this shows, I'm sure. But when you watch it, you'll see that there's some controversy around this particular comic book for different reasons, other than the cover. I think the cover is terrific. And so I'm just trying to find other ways of kind of sprucing it up a little bit with respect to that. And but just looking at it, what it really did for me was there were comic books I didn't know existed.
Sure.
And now I'm looking, I said, oh, this looks kind of interesting, And I've actually, most of the independents really. So occasionally I've picked up a few of them, and I read through them and said, yeah, these are pretty good. And so it's helped me to kind of broaden my, kind of comic book experience as well with respect to covers, but more so even content of some of these comics.
No, I mean I agree, and it's we have different tastes, right? Because a lot of the times the books I pick, a lot of times they're the same. There'll be similar, on both lists, but I'm I am drawn to a different type of cover a lot of times than you are. Like a lot of times we won't have any covers that match. Like, and sometimes we'll have all our covers will match or whatever. And I try not to watch your video before I pick mine, right? Like I want to, because I want to see,
Right.
because I want to see what you picked and then what I picked and
Right.
do like a compare contrast. Like it's almost like an analytical thing for me, to just kind of look and see what the differences are. And because, like I said, I love that video because I think you have a great eye. And you've actually turned me on to some covers that I had missed that, like, at first glance, I didn't catch. And then I go back and I really look at them, like, wow, that's beautiful. That is a beautiful, beautiful cover. And I think that's what I really enjoy about it. But, kind of talking about what you said, like when I do the first appearances and key issues, there's a lot of work that goes into that. Like it was stuff that I already did, but there's a ton of work. Like it takes me all week to get all the information for that. But then when I started doing comics on a budget, I started having to look at it in a completely different way. These are not books that necessarily, like if I was in the store, would I pick up? But if I was having to, if I had a $25 budget every week and I needed to get the biggest bang for my buck, what books would I buy? And I thought, how interesting. And so I started looking at it because I got kind of bored doing the top 5 with the first appearances and key issues. And so I was like, okay, I want to look at this in a different way. And I started doing that. And I thought,
And
wow,
that's a great video as well. I think it's great to look at it that way. And it reminds me of when I was a kid and the comics went from 10 cents to 12 cents. You have to start saying, well, which comic am I going to buy? Because I can't buy as many as I used to buy before. I mean, it's a little different now, but to me, that makes a big. And the other thing is too, when I watch yours, I always watch to see what you pick, and sometimes say, "Damn, that's a pretty good cover." Either maybe I missed it. It's possible, right? With all these covers you look at, or I might have overlooked it. Because so many of them have all these variant covers and all this stuff like that. And so I say, oh, that's a really good cover. And that should have been on the top 5.
Well, no, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of times you'll put covers on that, that I just, because what I do when I'm looking at covers, right, is I'm going through and I'm putting the list together and I'm looking at covers. If it catches my eye, like immediately, as soon as I see it, I'm like, oh, that's dope. I love that. Then it generally makes the list. And the other question I ask myself is, would I buy that cover? Do I like it so much that I would actually buy it for the cover? And maybe it's not a story that I'm interested in. Like I think it was this week. I think we both had it. Was that Dynamite #4?
Right.
That was a sick looking cover. Like that was. I would buy that cover just for the art of it. Like it was gorgeous, and that's a book that I'm not necessarily going to read.
Right.
So yeah, no, but I love that content. I hope you don't get bored with it. I like the guy coming on and doing the, like at the end. I thought that was awesome. Like, and I thought he did a great job with the iconic cover.
Yeah, one thing that I have to tell you, you said that there's a lot of research in this, but there's a lot of production time.
Oh yeah,
because I do little videos of each one of those covers, and I have to think about something to say about some of them, as well, rather than just letting them run. Like some people do, they let the new comics just run and they say, it's number 5 or whatever else. To me, that's kind of boring. And so when I look at it, I try to look at it and try to find some sort of redeeming value in some of them and talk about them. The covers I love the best. Obviously there's some that just from the artwork are just terrific, but the covers I like the best are the ones where the artist actually took some time to think about it. And come up with something where either through color or through the actual characters themselves are telling you a story. I mean, those are the ones that I really like, because a good painting, a really good photograph, by a well-known photographer, when you look at it, it tells you a story. And if it doesn't tell you a story, it just isn't as good. I mean, it could be really great, a beautiful rendition of a particular person or character. But if it tells you a story, this is a comic book after all, and there's a story inside, and you want that to jump out at you and say, well, look at this. There's Batman, and somebody's got him in the crosshairs. And does he know it? Does he not know it? What's going on there? Other ones are sometimes are even more. How can I put this? They're more elaborate because they're also using color. This negative space stuff. I think I'm over it now. But because how many more of these you're going to have? They look nice, but to me, it's more like, what are you doing with the colors there? Do the colors add to the cover, to the story itself? And a lot of times you may have a monochromatic cover and then just have some sort of color part that pops out at you. I'm not talking about like the something like Superman, whatever it is, red and blue, or whatever it is, red and white, whatever the heck those color things are. Those are cool. But to me, it's more like you've got some sort of a thing going on, and then there's something happening, like in this corner or something like that. Norman Rockwell used to do a lot of that. And if you look at the Norman Rockwell pictures, he basically, a lot of them were in V shape, the characters. And if you look at them, when they come down, they're actually pointing towards something, And I didn't know that until I took an art course, and the artist was telling me, and I was doing something. He says, well, you've got to look at things a certain way. And then she told me, she says, let's take a look at Norman Rockwell. I said, look at these Norman Rockwells. Now, she was talking about these kind of ways of painting or drawing, and said, is he doing that? And I said, oh, yeah, look at that. It's going right down to this shoe or something. Yeah. And the shoe was this different color, and it meant something in the painting that he did. And I never noticed that before, and taking that course opened up my eyes to so many different things. And as I think I mentioned to somebody, what she told me was something I didn't realize, but I have since realized, and that is a lot of people draw things the way they think they look instead of the way they actually look. And to me, that was an eye-opener, and it made me a better artist, a better drawer. And I think I mentioned this maybe on the Usual Suspects thing, but to me, that was significant. It was like an aha moment. And I try to do that with the covers too. I try to look at them in that way.
That's really interesting. Like where you do live in New York, there's a lot of culture there. You got the Met there, the whole thing. Do you enjoy that type of art as well?
Yes. Yeah, we've gone every now and then. We'll go down to New York and go to one of the museums to see, some of the art that's there. I mentioned the Spanish artists. Velázquez was one of my favorites, and there is a museum in northern Manhattan that has a number of his paintings. So we've done that. We were in Amsterdam a few years ago. My daughter was doing a junior year abroad, and so we went to Amsterdam, and we went to the Van Gogh Museum, which was great. Wow. It was fantastic. Although there were some of the better Van Goghs are in New York, actually, but the Van Gogh Museum was just terrific. Not so much for even the Van Goghs that they had there, but other, artists from the area that were in there too. So we do that, and I do enjoy looking at them, both portraits and landscape type of things. They're all different, and they all, really kind of show you something. If it's really good. It's something, like you said, covers jump out at you. If it's really good, these paintings will jump out at you.
No, I agree 100%. Like one of the things when we travel to New York, I do some business there from time to time with my investors, but a lot of times we go up there with the girls dance. They'll go up there and train, at one of these studios, one of these, big studios in New York. And a lot of times what I do when they're there, I will go over to the Met or I'll find an art gallery and just go in, and I don't know, there's something very calming about it to me as far as just to go in, have some time to really just sit and take these things in, and like you said, they're all different. And when it jumps at you, it just does. And I can stand there and look at one for a really long time and, and really just kind of take it in. I don't know. It's just something that, I enjoy comic book covers. But there's something about that art that really
you got to go down
me.
to Soho. I mean, the big museums are great.
Yeah.
But if you go down to Soho, there's a lot of these smaller museums, not museums, but I guess they're kind of museums, but they're also some of these art galleries, where some of these artists are actually trying to sell their stuff. And you can go down there and you can buy some if you want, but you can go through that. And it's just really unique. I mean, even in Cape Cod, there's a couple of art studios, and it's kind of interesting just to go in there and talk to the artists because they're there, and it's you talk to them about what they did and why they do it. And I have a good friend of mine who retired, and he took up art, and he's become a terrific artist. Matter of fact, I think he's selling stuff now as
Oh,
well,
wow.
which is really amazing. But when he was in Cape Cod a couple of years ago, he came to visit, and he and his wife stayed over our place for a few days. And so we went out to this one place, and it's just amazing to hear him speak to the artist, like artist to artist, and about some of the things and the foibles. And when I took the course, it was just great to talk to the artist about things and to learn more about it. He's been doing things with he's got kind of an artist coach. He's been doing it now for years, but he's got a great eye, and he's moved on to like oil painting and things like that, and pastels, which I wouldn't even touch at this point in time. I'm really still like in more or less pencils, maybe some ink or something like that.
I used to draw when I was a kid. I never could, like, I could never take what was in my mind and put it on a piece of paper. I could look at anything and draw it, and it would look just like it. But I could never get that. That's at some point when I retire, that's something I actually want to do. Is I want to see if I can get that out of my head. Like if there's a way to get it from here to here. And I just don't have time right now, with everything that goes on. But it's something that I would like to kind of dig into a little bit.
I think you should. And I'll tell you the same thing. I'm kind of the same way, but that's okay. I mean, what I've done is, so for example, I was in when I was in Cape Cod, we went over to this one house. My wife and I like to do kind of these antiquing things and estate sale type of stuff. And there's this beautiful house, was on the water, and I just looked out, and there was kind of this trawler, just kind of sitting there. And so what I did was I took a nice photograph of it, but I tried to take it with some depth. So there were some bushes. I took it with some depth there. But then what I did was, instead of looking at it that way, and I started drawing it and whatever else, because I took it for that reason. What I did is I transposed the picture into a black and white picture, which lent itself more to some of my pencil drawing, And then I took a look and I said, I don't need that many bushes there. But basically, that's something you can do. And I think it's fine. I don't know that I can get stuff out of my head there as well, but just taking something and taking a photograph and just then managing the photograph in some way is a great way of being able to look at something and draw something the way it actually looks, other than the way you think it should look.
Right. No, that's a great idea. Like I said, that is something I've always been interested in doing. I just haven't been able to do it for a long time. Like I said, running a business and the family, you know how it is. But to the point where I get some time, that's something I really want to try to do again. All right, so I could talk about that all night. I really could. All right, question 7, and one of the other segments that I really really enjoy on your channel is the comics my mother let me keep. So, how did your mom decide what comics she let you keep?
Well, it's not exactly that way, right? So we lived in Manhattan until 1969, and my parents were factory workers. We didn't have a lot of money, but they were savers. Which is something they taught me, to do. They were savers, and one by one, starting probably in the maybe the mid 60s, something like that, my aunts and uncles all moved to Staten Island. Staten Island was a place that we knew because one of my aunts and uncles had a bungalow there by the beach. And so we'd go out there for a week. It was kind of our vacation, and do that. And then they knocked it down and built a house. Then another uncle bought some property and built a house. Then another uncle and aunt, bought a house. And so we're basically, last men standing in Greenwich Village down there in the West Village in Manhattan. And so my parents saved up money and bought a house. And we moved in there in May of 1969. And so at that point in time, they, and still to this date, I don't quite get the logic of it, but I had just started college too. I was a freshman in college. And so I was, still involved in comics and buying like Justice League America and that type of stuff. But she came over to me and said, you should get rid of some of your comics, because we're moving to this place now. You don't want to have all these comics around or something like that. I don't remember the exact conversation. And so I actually basically threw out about half my comics. And to this date, I wonder, I'm happy for the ones I kept, but to this date, I wonder which ones I threw out.
Right.
And I had a logic for the ones I kept for the most part, not exactly, but most of the ones I kept were comics where there were multiple heroes. I really liked, I love the Justice League of America, Volume 1. But I really liked the idea of having, the Flash and Green Lantern together, that type of thing. The Brave and the Bold stuff with Batman or somebody would join in. I have a ton of World's Finest because it basically was Superman and Batman together, that type of stuff. So I have those, again, not exclusively, but that was kind of the focus behind it. So, if I had to estimate, I'd say probably I had somewhere between, I don't know, 500, 600, 700 comics, and maybe just ended up with something like 350 or 400 of them at that point in time. And I managed to keep them. I stopped collecting around 1972 or 3. I graduated from college in 1972, got a job teaching, and I think the only comics I bought at that time were ones that maybe I had some subscriptions that, were running out, those subscription creche type of comics.
Yeah.
And so those are the last ones that I had before I got back involved in the mid 2000s. And so I had those and I kept those, and they moved with me. They stayed at my mother's house, but then they moved with me when after I got married and I bought a house. I bought some of those comics, not all, because I found some other ones in the attic, and that type of thing. But I ended up losing some stuff that was probably could have been pretty good comics at this point in time.
No, I love that segment. I find it interesting, just like the things that you chose to keep, and why. And then the fact that just those are books you had when you were a kid, right? You actually went and bought those, and I don't know. I just love that segment. All right.
Well,
So
wait until the Spider-Man one comes out. I'm thinking I'm going to do that in a few weeks.
I can't wait, man.
That's
No, it is. It's a
cool.
great segment. If you're watching this and you don't watch that, it really is cool. Like, these books that Joe purchased when he was a kid, and he has them. It's just awesome. Mm-hmm. Question 8, Joe. I was just wondering, do you enjoy music?
Oh, yeah.
What's your favorite type of music?
Well, Jimmy, I'm an old rocker from way back. So, I like all the different kinds of music. My son actually likes jazz. He got me into jazz a little bit.
I enjoy jazz.
Not that I can tell you I like this particular, musician or that particular musician, but I like the sound. I like listening to it. Kind of a smooth jazz type of thing. I guess the music that I really like is kind of classic rock. That's what I grew up with. I was in college with that. But then I really, when I was single and a hot to trot guy, was during the time of, I don't know if I should say this.
Of course you should say it.
Like Saturday Night Fever stuff, man.
Yeah, disco, baby.
Yeah. I still have a pair of the shoes. Now, here's the thing. I lived in Staten Island, right? And so Saturday Night Fever and all this stuff happened in Brooklyn. So we went to those places, that were in the movie. And the whole thing there was, you had to have like the open chested shirt, and and the like the 3-piece jacket, the 3-piece jacket, suit and stuff like that. I had a lime jacket and a lime suit and a tan jacket and this wonderful shirt that was all flowery. I had I think I still have it somewhere because I have a box with everything that I have that was before I married my wife is in a box. So my life before her is in a small box in the closet. And I think I might still have this, but I had kind of this gold chain thing that I wore. But here's the key, and I still have at least one pair of the shoes. I don't think I have both of them. But, the shoes there, you had these big, heels and platform shoes, and stuff like that. And so I had also, for that flowery shirt, I didn't usually wear a jacket, but I had like powder blue pants that went with that. And I wore that gold chain thing around there. And so you had to wear these platform shoes. So I had to get the pants cut for the platform shoes. So I can only wear those pants with the powder blue platform shoes. And then for like my other things, I had like these brown platform shoes. And again, the pants had to be cut for them. And so it's kind of funny because when my dad passed away a few years back and we closed down the house, and so I found a pair of shoes. So I have them, and they're in the garage. And I showed the kids, hey, these are the shoes I used to wear when I used to go out discoing, you know. But that to me, I mean, I still like on the radio thing in like the 70s songs. I mean, I think they're great songs. I still like them. I listen to them a lot of times. You know, I listen to classic rock songs. I listen to jazz. I like listening to uh, you know, kind of you know, hip hop a little bit. I'll listen to some of that, you know, with respect to that. But Motown sounds.
Yeah,
I
Motown
mean,
is my uncle loved Motown. I used to listen to it all
oh,
the time.
yeah. I mean, there some of those like the Temptations, but the Four Tops were my favorite band, and the Spinners. I love the
Hmm.
Spinners, you know, and so all of those things. I mean, that I'll listen to a channel on that all the time too. So it's pretty across the board with respect to that. But and some of the new music, my son is really into music, and he knows all the bands, and he goes see them and all that. So he sends me stuff. He goes, I think you'll like this band, and I'll listen to it, and because he knows what I like, and I say, yeah, I like this band. You know, we went to see with him. Who did we go see? We went to see Hall and Oates, I think it was.
Hmm.
And they had a band. They had a guy who opened up for him, and I said, this guy's really good. He says, yeah, Dad. He's like, he was a big thing 10 years ago. I said, he was. I said, well, I like that guy.
Well, I
You
miss
know.
it. Yeah. No, I love. Well, who would be your? I have multiple questions here. All right, so
Okay.
who would be your classic rock? You know, like as far as like a rock band, like who would be your band?
Well, I mean, I was a big Beatles fan. I don't know if you'd
Oh
really
yeah,
call them a rock band in that sense. I mean, they kind of were, but then they became really eclectic in a lot of different ways.
yeah. But they were rock and
Um,
roll, baby, because they were different. You know, I mean, that's the thing about the Beatles is they became eclectic. They were totally rock and roll.
yeah, they were rock and roll in the beginning, and I still, I mean, some of my favorite songs that I sing in the shower and stuff like time are early Beatles songs. But I really like the Who.
Oh yeah,
You
I
know,
love the Who.
especially like their operas like in Quadrophenia. I
Yep.
went to see them, you know, play Quadrophenia and stuff like that. The Rolling Stones I liked as well. I'm trying to think of who else might have been significant back then for me. Those I guess were the top three. As we moved more into like, you know, 80s and stuff like that, you know, things like Elton John and others.
Hmm.
I mean, you know, the Water album I think came out when I was, I think, a junior, maybe in college and stuff like that. I remember it was on the jukeboxes in the bar. I remember playing, I forget what it was, I think it was Tiny Dancer
Oh
from
yeah.
that album. And one of my friends hears me. I come over back and sit down, and he says, oh, see, you really like good music, you know. So we were like into that type of stuff. So I mean, you know, so it kind
Oh,
of
you
changed as it went along, and you pick up more people that you like.
Well, you grew up during a really good time for music, you know, with the Elton Johns and the Billy Joels and, you know, Zeppelin back then. You know, like you grew up in a great time for music. And I mean, I like even myself when I was in college. I think everybody thinks that about, you know,
Crosby,
their
Stills,
era.
and Nash was another one. I was trying to think of
Yes,
which one. That was a real big one for me.
I love them too.
Yeah.
All right. So, one quick story for me, and then my last question on this topic. So, how I discovered jazz music. Like, I don't want to, you know, in a different life when I was single. I was doing some business in Washington D.C. and I stumbled over into Georgetown.
Hmm.
And when I say stumble, I mean I stumbled. Okay, and I end up going by this little dive, and I heard this music, and I was like, "What is that?" And so I stopped. I walked in. I was the only white dude in the place. Like I was the only white person in the entire place. And I walk in, pull up to the bar, and I sit there for like 2 hours. I had the best time. Like I got out there and danced. I had the best time. And that is when I discovered jazz music. Because jazz is, I don't know, it's kind of an acquired taste in one
Yeah.
sense because it is so different. It's, you know, kind of eclectic. It's just a bunch of sounds really, but it's just really cool. And that was the night there was a band up there playing, and I ended up having the best time that night. Doing that, and I became a jazz fan ever since. Like if I go to New Orleans or a place like that, that's what I go do. Like I like to go to Jazz Fest. I'm like you. I love all kinds of different music. Being from Eastern Kentucky, country is a big thing here. There's some
Right.
country music
I
I
like country
like.
as well. Mhm.
Yeah, I like older country. Like I'm more of a Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, George Strait, not George Strait, George Jones, Hank. That kind of stuff is what I kind of like from the country standpoint. But I like all kinds of different music too. And what I was saying is, I think when you grow up, like my time in college, that was when Nirvana came out, and that they just flipped. I remember I was telling Louis the other night, it'll be on 10 Questions tomorrow. We were talking about this, and I said I remember when Teen Spirit came out. I was coming out of my grandmother's after church, and Mom turned on the radio, and Teen Spirit came on. I was like, oh wow, like that's crazy. So yeah, no, I'm a big music guy too. Okay, all right. So there's a couple more questions I want to get. Oh no, the other question. Sorry, and then we can wrap this up. I can't believe I almost forgot. Was Joe a dancer?
No, I was a singer. And
So you would sing. You when you went disco Saturday Night
well,
Fever,
I
you
did.
didn't get out there and cut a
Yeah,
rug.
yeah, I did, but it was kind of basic,
Kind of like
rock the boat, don't rock the boat, baby,
yeah,
be
you
able to
stay
do the
right
disco
here.
thing,
Yeah,
But
stay right
I
here,
was
Joe.
I was a singer as a kid and continue to sing a little bit now, and always enjoyed singing, and so to me, I was more of a singer. So I was not don't have really good moves, no Michael Jackson, if you will,
And if you want to give me an A-OK, all right, like if it ever crosses your mind
yeah.
that you want to give Jimmy at Small Town an A-OK, I have a request. There has to be a picture of you somewhere in this lime green outfit with these platform shoes. I just want you to send me a copy of this picture. I need to see Joe as Johnny Fever. I have to see it. Like when you were describing that, I was sitting here thinking, wow, that I got to see it. If you want to
I
give me an
don't know.
A-OK,
I don't
that's
know
what
if
I
that
want.
exists. I don't know if that exists, but I'd be happy to look.
If it doesn't exist, that is an absolute crime. So I love it, man. That's awesome. All right. So, question 9, last 2 questions. I know you collect some other things. It's not just comic books. Like, talk a little bit about, some of your other passions when it comes to collecting.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I mean, some of these passions kind of come and go, you know. So I've been involved with the Boy Scouts for many years, and so I have a pretty extensive patch collection. As a matter of fact, I've gone to some jamborees and bought patches and traded down there as well. For a while, I collected Boy Scout knives as well. So I have like a box full of Boy Scout knives that I would buy off of eBay or other places that I would get the knives. Over the space of time, I there were some things. For example, I have baseball cards. I don't have the ones that I had when I was a kid, unfortunately. But when my son was born, for the first few years, I bought entire sets of like tops and things like
Sure.
for him. And then I decided, hey, I'll go out and buy some for myself. So I have some of those as well. I also have some cards which I might show in a video at some point in time. But I have some what is it? Some Batman cards, I guess it was
Mm-hmm.
from way back when. And do I have others? I might have some others too. I don't know. I got to look in that pre-marriage box and see what I have in there. But I think I have some of them in there as well.
Were cards a big thing when you were a kid? Like
Baseball
trading
cards
cards?
were.
Yeah.
Baseball cards were. I remember like wanting to get like a Mickey Mantle, and because he was my idol growing up. I mean, you can kind of see a little bit. Let's see over there, right there.
Mm-hmm.
I had that for the longest time. That is I think it's a sport magazine or Sports Illustrated magazine with Mickey on the cover. I'm a big Yankees fan, been for years, And I mean, when he retired and whatever else, I was in tears. I was in tears, even though he wasn't the same player he was early on. To me, that was like, very emotional for me. So I had baseball cards were really big. We would trade them, collect them, and all of that. And a lot of my friends did baseball cards, even the ones that didn't do comics. Baseball cards were kind of a common element there. Though what we did do with some of the baseball cards is, if you're good enough to have a bicycle, in the city, some of us had bicycles. You can put the cards in the
in the
spokes of the
spokes.
wheels, and so they'd make a noise.
We used
So I
to
don't know
do
how
that
many.
too.
Yeah, I don't know how many cars we destroyed with that.
Yeah, I used to do that too. Like really, I talk about my uncle a lot, but that's really what he was doing is he was selling baseball cards, and then he
Yeah,
had comic books. And I used to go to the flea markets with him, and and sit around. And like I
right.
said, he was the best dude ever. I mean, really, he was. He was so
That's
kind to
great.
me, and I could touch anything I wanted. Nobody else was allowed to, but I could touch anything that I wanted.
Wow.
If I wanted to read it, if I wanted to pick a card up and look at it, he would let me. It was my dad's brother, and him and my dad were really close, and so we were always together. We always went and ran around together, and that's some of the best memories of my life, are just being with him and my dad.
That's interesting because it's great that he gave you those memories, and I just brought up to mind my nephew now, who's like approaching 40, I think. He's got his own family and kids, and his son is really into like Thor. I mean, as a matter of fact, I drew 2 pictures of Thor, for him. I did 2 drawings for him. I got him his first comic. Matter of fact, there's a video that I did. I think about last November. They were over here for Thanksgiving, and I set up something, and I went through the thing, and at the end I gave him his first comic book, which was really kind of cool. But my nephew, when he was young, and the first X-Men movies came out, he was like into the X-Men. And so I mentioned to him that I have like X-Men number 2, 3, 4, 5, all those things like that. So he was over at my house. He says, "Uncle Joe, can I look at those X-Men?" And I'm sitting there saying to myself, So I said, "Okay." I said, so I took him out, I gave it to him, and I said, "You could look through them." I said, "But if you rip one of them," I said, "I'm going to kill you." so he was, he looked through them, but he was very delicate. He did a really good job looking through the comics. But then now that I thought back, and I said, that must have been a really great thrill for him to be able to do something
Sure.
like that. So I think that's great when somebody takes an interest and really helps you kind of learn about something like that, and lets you do it. That's really good.
Yeah, no, he was. I mean, he truly was the best. Like, I mean, and he's passed on now. Him and my
Mm.
dad both are gone, and and those are the things that I think about. Is really a Saturday afternoon digging around in a barn somewhere with my uncle, or being at the flea market, sitting on his table reading comic books. I could go get whatever food I wanted, get flea market food. I could go get what I wanted. And now I had to be careful. Like when I had the comic books, like he taught me how to handle them.
Great.
But he never stopped me. He
Mm.
was just like, whatever's here. If you want to read it, open it up and read it. That's what it's for. And I don't know. Like I said, he was just a super, super cool guy. I wanted to ask you about the Boy Scouts. Is that something from your childhood, or was that with your son, like that kind of developed that?
Yeah, yeah. I was a scout for a couple of years, but a friend of mine convinced me to drop it. When I went to high school, I went to a military high school, a day military high school. And he told me, he goes, "Well, why would you want to continue with Boy Scouts? You're going to wear uniforms at home. You're going to wear." So as a 13-year-old kid, whatever, that made a lot of sense to me.
Sure.
So I think I was a second class scout or something like that. I was a scout for 2 years. But for my son, I mean, he was a very smart kid, not extremely athletic. And so I thought it would fit really well for him, and it did. He excelled at it. He became an Eagle Scout. But he was really good at it, and it really helped him, I think to in terms of leadership skills and all of that.
Sure.
So as a parent, as many parents, I got involved when he first started, but after he left, I remained involved. I mean, I was on the our council's executive board for a number of years as well. I've donated money to them. I've been involved. I've been the merit badge dean for people that know what that means. For the council for the last 12 years. Matter of fact, I told the guy and said, I'm retiring at the end of the year. So after like 12 years, you got to find somebody else to do it, because I go all these different places now, and it's a little bit harder. I'm still I tried to detach myself from the troop I've been involved with, my son was involved with, because I've been detaching myself from everything since I got since I got the place in Florida and all that. It just came a little bit harder to do things, but they wouldn't
Sure.
hear of it. So they put me. I was an assistant scoutmaster for like, I don't know, eons. So they put me on the committee. So I've been on the committee now, and I try to go when I can, but I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to do that as well. So I'm kind of, I think, kind of easing out of that. But to me, it was a great organization, and I had a number of boys that I brought along as their den leader, and then became the assistant scoutmaster for their patrol. And the 4 boys that I was involved with from the first day till the last day all became Eagle Scouts,
Oh,
and
wow.
they're all great guys now. They're in business, or they're in policemen. My son's an engineer. I mean, they're all like really, really good guys, and I get to see them every now and then, not as often as I'd like, because but when they come around, I try to say hi and we get to talk a little bit about it.
Well, that's cool, man. I think that's great. We didn't have Boy Scouts here where I lived.
Oh,
There was a Girl Scout troop, but there was no Boy Scouts. I don't know why. There just wasn't.
mm,
Very blue collar town. Coal mining. Was
yeah,
the industry. My dad was a coal miner. My uncle was a coal miner. That was that was the work. That's what
yeah,
we had here to do. So and because of that, my dad was like, "You will never be a coal miner. You're going to college." Yeah, like
right,
one summer he was like, what are you going to do when you go to college?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to go. I think maybe I want to get out and start working." And I always had kind of an entrepreneurial spirit. Like I
right,
said, I'm going to get out and kind of hustle and do something. He was a boss on this job, and him and one of the other bosses, they brought me up there one summer and they worked my guts out. Like, I mean, like manual labor,
yeah.
worked till some days it'd be so hot I'd just puke. I mean, like it was
Wow.
crazy. And summer was over. He said, "You going to college?" And I said, "Yes, sir. I'll be going to college. Manual labor is not my thing."
Yeah. And that's smart though, because my son also would. My wife was very good with that. My son got a job at a local, like a CVS drugstore, right? And so he's sitting down there, and he's doing different things. He's actually trying to develop new systems for them because he felt things were inefficient, and the manager wasn't taking interest. If things worked, they just worked. And he put together like this list of what to do when somebody comes in with photographs, and the manager goes, "Who did this?" And he says, "I did." He goes, "Oh, it's pretty good." So then, so he's working there. He comes back one day and he goes, "Dad, there's a guy there. He's been working there for like 10 or 11 years." And he says, he's going to work there forever. He goes, "I think I'd shoot myself if I had to work there for 11 years." And the whole point, my wife says, "Yeah, I want him to work there so he can see, do you want to do that? Or do you want to go to college and excel and that type of stuff?" And so I think that that's a great lesson that probably more parents should do for their kids, to
He
give
about
them the
killed me.
opportunity to see what's available out
I
there.
mean, no, he about killed me. I mean, he really did. I told him one day, I said, "Man, you're going to kill me."
Hmm.
Because they had us up there cutting weeds on the side of these mountains, packing. It didn't need to be done. They were just making me do
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
just to try to teach me a lesson, I guess. So, all right,
yeah.
question 10, last question. This is an easy one. Do you have any grails that you're chasing? Like, do you have a grail, something that you don't have that you really want, and if you can afford to pick it up someday, that you will?
Well, there's so many different comics that you'd like to have, right? Like, like Hulk 181 and those type of things. And another one that the other ones are, I have like X-Men #2, but not #1. I have Fantastic Four #3, but not #1 and 2. I have Avengers #2, but not #1. That type of stuff. I have Spider-Man #5, but not #1, 2, 3, 4. But those aren't really my grails. If someone wants to, hey, anybody watch this, you want to leave it to me in your will or give me a gift, those are great. But the one thing that I've been working towards, is to complete my run of the Justice League of America Volume 1. And I don't go crazy looking for them, but I go into a shop, I'll look. I have a list on my phone. If I see one that I need, I'll pick it up. That type of thing. And I'm down. There's 261 issues in that, and there are 3 annuals in that run, and I have 231 of the issues, and I have all 3 annuals. But as maybe I'm sure you know this, and other DC guys know, the JLA started in Brave and the Bold, number
Mm-hmm.
28, 29, and 30. So I have 29 and I have 30. I don't have 28. That's my grail. That's the one I'd like to get.
That's a great one.
But even like a a 2.0 or something like that is a few $1,000s.
Yeah, no, it's an incredibly expensive book.
Yeah, yeah. If you want to get a mid-grade one, you're probably talking $7,000-8,000 and stuff like that. So that would be the one that I would love to get at some point in time. And I don't know if I should win the lot, because my wife would never allow it.
Right.
And I try to segregate my money, that I pay, but
Right.
I don't have like $7,000 or $8,000 to blow on something like that.
Right.
So that would be the grail, I think. If I would get that, I would be extremely happy.
That's cool. I love that. It's a great answer. Well, Joe, man, I've had a ball. Like, I hope you've had fun. Like, this is a great conversation. You're an incredibly interesting fella. Just a lot of different interests.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you really are. I mean, like I said, one of the things I forgot to mention when you do your cover videos is the way that you say the names. And like, I struggle. Like, I mean, like, for real struggle saying a lot of these names. And it's interesting. Like, that's why I wanted to ask you the music question, because I thought you might have something interesting to say, like with the music. But no, man, I love your channel. Like, I'm a big fan. And I'm so happy that you agreed to come on and sit down with me.
We're going to have to get together, even virtually, and I'm going to have to teach you how to do those vowels. Because
are you sure?
The way to pronounce the vowels, and if you can get those vowels down, you can say things like parillo. You can say it really well.
You sure you want to take that on, Joe?
I'll give it a shot.
I've been talking like this a long time. Yeah, no, Joe, I had an absolute blast, man. Guys, if you're watching this, go follow Joe's channel. It really is good. Man's got a great eye for the covers. That truly is one of my favorite. And the stories that he tells as he's kind of presenting some of the older books that he has in his collection. It's just very, very interesting to me. Yeah, I'll put all Joe's stuff down in the description below. Definitely go check him out. Great, great channel. I think you'll really enjoy it. And and then the last thing, of course, a couple things. The Road to 1,000 subscriber giveaway, we did hit that mark. The tentative date for that is October 8th. As long as nothing else comes up, that should be the day that we do the live and do the 1,000 subscriber giveaway. And then, of course, the code I have at Street Level Hero LA, STC10, where you can get 10% off your order. But most importantly, Street Level Hero will donate 25% of your overall order to the American Cancer Society. And when JPG and I started doing that, it was really just going to be for like a few weeks, see how it went. And the response has been so good that we just keep doing it. So thank you guys for that. But I'll wrap it up here. Joe from Anachronic Comics. What a great interview, man. That's so interesting. So, thanks, guys, Jimmy. That's it for us. This has been 10 Questions.